Just to give you an idea as to the state of free speech in Britain right now, yesterday my fellow comedian and occasional colleague Graham Linehan was arrested by 5 armed police over a few jokey tweets at Heathrow Airport on his return from America, where he's had to flee to not get arrested over jokey tweets. Police seized his phone. I was shocked to hear that someone in London hadn't already had their phone stolen by a kid on a bike. Airports are terrifying places under authoritarian regimes. The Imam Khomeini International Airport in Tehran is a buttock-sweatingly nerve-wracking place for anyone who's been critical of Iran's Islamist regime. That's where they're apprehended, detained and disappeared, tortured and hung for their insolence against the theocracy. And so it is in Britain now, where our theocracy is radical progressive leftism. Dirty, stinking, useless communists have completed their long march through the institutions. It took them a long time because they're lazy, and now they control every tentacle of the state's reach, to the extent that they can order armed police to arrest a comedian because he doesn't do the pronoun thing, and the police go along with it. As we saw in 1930s Germany, police will go along with pretty much anything. Graham was arrested by armed police, locked in a cell and ordered not to use Twitter. He's silenced like a political dissident. A police spokesman said, "It is routine for officers policing airports to carry firearms. These were not drawn or used at any point during the arrest." Yeah, well done on not shooting him. As J.K. Rowling said, what the F has the UK become? This is totalitarianism, utterly deplorable. And lefties are delighted that someone's basic human rights to have a normal opinion that most people think is completely trampled over. I'm going to explain how the police has been taken over by the bizarre gender woo-woo cult, why there's no chance of these charges sticking, why the police don't actually care that there's no chance of these charges sticking, and why, when the right gets into power, we shouldn't repeal these speech laws. Well, not straight away. Anyway, first, let's just recognise how absolutely insane it is that Graham was arrested for a few jokey tweets. Here they are. If a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. I mean, that's obviously funny. It pricks the pomposity of this idea that it's a woman by punching in the balls, which only men have. The next one is just a picture of some trans activists with Graham's caption, "A photo you can smell," which is funny because a can of Impulse isn't designed to deal with the armpits of a fat 57-year-old man squeezed into a pink polyester teenage girl's outfit. And there's another tweet saying, "I hate them, misogynists and homophobes, F off." This is referring to trans activists, so it's not hate against a particular sexuality or demographic based on their characteristics. It's hate against a specific bunch of campaigners who actively do bad things and hurt people. In the Soviet Union, they had laws so vaguely worded and so open to interpretation that anyone could be feasibly seen to have broken them, and so do we under this crappy communist regime. The regime studiously ignores actual crime and the industrial scale rape of British children and instead focuses on tweets by comedians, so it's losing all legitimacy in the eyes of the citizens. Well, apart from the far left anyway, who are right on board with Graham being punished in this way. Obviously the gender woo-woo cult, real women who look like this, think that Graham's arrest is great. "Graham Linehan being arrested is better than coffee this morning. Finally, some consequences for spewing hate on the daily. I take being blocked by him as a badge of honour. Heavy metal sign. And J.K. Rowling is scared because she has said the same stuff that he did. I hope they are knocking on her door next." But also, lefty leaders think it's great. The new leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, appeared on the BBC.
According to Graham Linehan, because the only thing the police have said is that they've acknowledged a man was arrested on suspicion of inciting violence. That's why the police say they turned up. What's your view, Mr. Polanski?
These are totally unacceptable tweets, and I accept that people who are in politics, we get lots of abuse, but let's also face we shouldn't get abused, and I certainly recognise that women get more abuse than I do. For instance, I get a lot of anti-Semitic abuse. I'm one of a few Jewish leaders that have been in British politics. Today, a Muslim man was elected as my deputy leader, Motin Ali. I've seen the amount of Islamophobia he gets. We also know that for all of those groups, trans people have been in the sights of the nastiness and the toxicity for a long time. Now, I accept proportionality of police response is a conversation we need to have.
Well, do you think this was proportionate?
I think it was proportionate to arrest him. I think there's a pattern here.
5 armed police officers turning up?
Well, that's the bit that I don't understand why they were armed. And again, I'd need to hear about the police response.
And why there were 5, presumably.
For sure.
These are totally unacceptable tweets. I think it was proportionate to arrest them. Leftists seem to welcome ridiculous arcane speech laws because they think they will only ever be used against their enemies. This is is why, when the right take power, we shouldn't be in a hurry to repeal these laws. Instead, we must find unacceptable tweets by people like Zach Polanski and everyone else and punish them to the full extent of the law until their opinions about speech crimes improve. If we repeal the laws, the left will never understand why these speech laws are bad, and they'll reinstate them when they're back in power. If they have time in jail as a result of these laws, they'll have time to ruminate on how bad these laws are and won't bring them back, especially if they're in a men's prison. The things Graham said in those tweets don't come anywhere near the foothills of criminality. His supposedly controversial opinions about the gender woo-woo cult are just reality-based normal opinions. The cultists only have an issue with him because he refuses to subscribe to their religion. It's absolutely bonkers to think that a person magically turns into a woman just from saying, "I'm a woman." That's a belief in the power of magic spells. It's similar to the Catholic belief in transubstantiation, where the wine and wafer become the literal blood and body of Christ. But at least transubstantiation is part of a larger religion that does good in the world. The gender woo-woo cult bullies its way into women's spaces. It preys on vulnerable children, leading to them being drugged, sterilised and mutilated, and viciously attacks anyone who criticises the cult. They're like Scientologists that cut your kids' balls off. The state knows that this won't result in a conviction, and they know that they'll likely have to pay damages, but the process is the punishment and the damages are paid by the taxpayer. The language used by the police is very revealing. Graham recounts that the officer interrogating me mentioned trans people. I asked him what he meant by the phrase, "people who feel their gender is different than what was assigned at birth," said the officer. I mean, this is the language of trans activists. Your gender isn't assigned at birth. A doctor doesn't just decide whether you're going to be a boy or a girl and pluck that randomly from the ether. No, he looks and sees if you've got a cock or a fanny. Your gender isn't assigned, it's observed. And you don't need me to tell you this, but it's biologically fixed and observable right down to the molecular level with hormones and chromosomes and all that science bollocks, and actual bollocks, come to think of it. And the idea that doctors are assigning it as if they turn up to a car crash and assign a broken leg. But the police are supposed to be sensible and impartial. Why are Dibble going along with this? Don't people join the police after watching Starsky and Hutch and want to slam criminals across car bonnets and protect upstanding British people instead of protecting cross-dressing fetishists and slamming the opinions of anyone who questions why a 40-year-old man wants to play on a girls' netball team or why a male rapist is being placed in a women's prison? It's like a plot from one of Graham's comedies. Our police have somehow been taken over by a cult of men that dress up in frilly knickers and call themselves Susan and insist that it's a heinous crime if anyone doesn't indulge them. Trans activists have a tight grip on the purple shaft of our institutions via the campaign group Stonewall. Stonewall began in 1989 to lobby for gay rights, but over decades it changed from focusing on gay rights to focusing on transgender rights, and it evolved from an external pressure group into a highly networked institution, expanding its mandate into workplace equality, schools and public services. And as its tendrils snaked through our institutions, these activists became policymakers, in effect crafting public sector standards rather than merely advocating for them. One of its most effective mechanisms for influence is the Diversity Champions Scheme. This was established in 2001. The Diversity Champions Programme offers public and private employers training, policy advice and branding to signal LGBT inclusivity. So members pay for these services and then gain visibility on Stonewall's platforms. Effectively, they get a little stamp saying they're part of the cult. It's like a mafia shakedown scheme. If you pay, you get the stamp, you get told you're a good person, you're hitting all your DEI targets. But if you don't pay, then they can come after you and call you transphobic. By the 2010s, scores of public institutions, including the Royal Navy, the RAF, the British Army and MI5, had joined up to Stonewall's Diversity Champion Scheme, along with numerous universities, health trusts and banks. Stonewall became deeply embedded across the state apparatus, influencing policy, presenting themselves as experts on gender issues rather than extreme radical activists. Stonewall didn't merely remain an external advocate, they actively shaped internal police policy via the Diversity Champion Scheme. This caused controversy, with organisations such as Police Scotland severing ties amid concerns that Stonewall's emphasis on gender self-identification tactics overshadowed the protected characteristic of biological sex, i.e. women, with insane consequences, such as when the male rapist Isla Bryce, who's a big muscly bloke with neck tattoos but is apparently a 100% real woman according to Stonewall trans activists, was placed in a women's prison. I know prison is supposed to be a punishment, but Scottish women's prisons are already pretty rough, without lobbing violent muscle rapists into them like a bizarre episode of Squid Game. Similarly, in Whitehall, multiple major departments, including the Home Office and the Treasury, withdrew from the Diversity Champions programme, triggered by worries about impartiality, ideological overreach, and policy capture by Stonewall's gender identity-focused guidance. Do you think? Kemi Badenoch warned of public bodies falling prey to ideological capture. She questioned how police, politics and the NHS let groups like Stonewall set policy without proper scrutiny. I don't know, Kemi, but most of it happened on the Tories' watch, and Stonewall were making insane amounts of money from their institutional shakedown. They still are. In Scotland, despite growing scepticism, the Scottish Government continued to fund Stonewall heavily, granting around £640,000 between 2016 and 2023, even as key institutions like Police Scotland and the Scottish Parliament distanced themselves. As of the latest data, Stonewall has revenue of approximately £7.8 million and has over 130 staff, so still wields enormous influence. Stonewall's ascent into the heart of UK public institutions, particularly policing, represents a shift from advocacy to authority, subsidised by public funding and given the illusion of legitimacy through branding and enrolment in diversity programmes. A private lobby group for a bizarre fringe ideology has effectively become a quasi-regulator, setting the terms for complex, contested issues without proper democratic or legal mandate. So no wonder comedians want to take the piss out of trans activists and gender ideology. It's a dangerous game though. Our supposedly independent judiciary also have to swear fealty to the cult of diversity, equity and inclusion. The application process to become a barrister includes a section on diversity, action and understanding. Applicants must demonstrate both understanding of diversity issues impacting the profession and clients and evidence of personal proactive action taken to promote equality, access or inclusion. I mean, these aren't neutral terms. These are just a cover for the sort of ideology that Stonewall pushes. So what's going to happen to Graham now? Despite all this institutional bias, I think there's pretty much zero chance of any charges sticking. The Free Speech Union is fighting his case, and they've got an admirable track record of pushing back against such ridiculous instances. Do sign up to them. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union. Even with our justice system being crammed full of lefty activist judges and barristers forced to kiss the ring of Stonewall, and hopefully they've shaved it, it's inconceivable that the charges will stick and the police will likely have to pay damages for wrongful arrest. As Toby Young, the head of the Free Speech Union, says, Graham was arrested under suspicion of having committed an offence under Section 3A of the Public Order Act. Section 3A says, a person who distributes or shows or plays a recording of visual images or sounds which are threatening is guilty of an offence if he intends thereby to stir up religious hatred or hatred on the grounds of sexual orientation. Graham cannot possibly be guilty of this offence since it makes no reference to transgender status, and all three of the tweets the police question him about referred to trans rights activists. Indeed, in 2022, the Law Commission of England and Wales consulted about extending the stirring up offences in the Public Order Act to include the other characteristics protected under other hate crime laws, namely disability and transgender status. That makes it clear that as it stands, Section 3A of the Public Order Act does not make it a criminal offence to stir up hatred against someone on the grounds of transgender status. For that reason, there is zero chance of the Crown Prosecution Service bringing a case under Section 3 of the POA. Although I'd like to point out that gender ideology is basically a religion. Could they therefore argue that it's stirring up religious hatred? But with arrests like this, the process is the punishment. They seized Graham's devices and his bags, they detained him, they smeared his name, they banned him from Twitter. He'll be added to various non-crime hate incident type lists that could, ironically, make it harder for him to travel back to America, where he's been living as a free man in a free country. But comedy has been dead in the UK for a while unless you stay within the boundaries assigned by the moral nurse ratchets who gatekeep and monitor our culture. But this arrest shows that even when comedians escape to a free country like America, Britain will still crush them if they ever return. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you want to see me perform live, I'm doing stand-up comedy shows on the 26th of September with Francis Foster in London, and I'm doing a solo show on the 26th of November at the Attic in Southampton. That's a full solo show, so you get me talking nonsense for nearly 2 hours. There are links to both of them below, and if you want to support me making these videos and get exclusive content and early access and stuff like that, you can sign up to my Patreon. There's a link below, or you can give me money to buy a raspberry slushie or a new pillowcase. Anyway, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye bye.